agree, like Tanika and Michelle, and direct it to all panelists and attendees. And when we feel the energy of all the agreement going, I will turn it over. Really warm, warm welcome to Anni Holm, and welcome her here, and get ready and get started.
Well, thank you first of all for having me. This is going to be my first webinar, so I'm very excited about, trying this out. Usually I'm in person speaking to crowds and doing presentations in different places. So this will be a little bit different, but I hope that I'll still have an opportunity to engage with all of you that are watching and taking part today. So feel free, like if you have questions along the way. I think Kathy is going to be monitoring the chat box. She's going to, keep an eye on any questions that may pop up. And I haven't decided, we forgot to talk about if we're going to have the questions as we go. So maybe, maybe that would be a good way to go. Sometimes it's hard to remember questions until the end. So I'm all for having dialogue. So this is, shoot away with any questions. I know we also have Dee here who's going to help me forward the slides. So if you can go to the next one.
That's fine.
So first of all, what I'd like to do is I would like for all of you to participate in a 4-minute activity. And so then this next slide is going to contain an audio file. And I was going to ask you to open the chat box, but this was actually what we were working on up until the last minute to get this, because we had issues with putting what I was wanting you to participate with in the chat box. So we came up with another solution. So you can ignore that line completely. But you will in the next slide also find lyrics to sing along with me. And I really hope that all of you enjoy or join me in singing. Although you don't need to worry about how you sing or how well you sing, because at this point I cannot hear you, and you're all on mute and I cannot see you either. So rock out however you want, but I just, this is usually what I start my presentation with. So this would just be nice to try to do it here too. And feel free to share about your experience after the fact. So we can go.
I'm going to sing with you, Anni, so you're not all alone, okay?
Good. Yeah, because, I'm going to be singing. I have a pre-recording of my singing too, which sounds a little bit better probably than my singing today, but, that would be great. Yeah. And, if somebody feels brave, I suppose that they can unmute and they can sing along too if they'd like. So let's go to the next slide. And if everybody feel like they can see the lyrics, I would like to say, let's start.
We got to get we
got to get the music going.
Should be an engineer, but I love their choir and art too much, especially Vermeer. Confused adventures, I went on to a private school where I studied art around the clock. It was really, really cool. Oh, Chicago, my dreams you made come true. There's room for all as art is dear. The sky is much more blue. From breathing art, I soon went on to cleaning toilets. I longed for something better and said bye to my pets. I worked in a rehab for a year while selling groceries. And after that I followed in the track of Mr. Meese. graduating, I have done a whole variety, from working in a photo lab to run a gallery. My art career has brought me around in this very land. Exhibits, talks, and happenings, my artwork has expanded. Oh, Chicago, my dreams you made come true. There's room for all us artists here, the sky is much more blue. I have met so many artists here, it truly has been great. Chicago artists are the best friends I've ever made. I don't know how to end this verse, my life's still going on. But thank you all and each of you for singing on my song. Oh, Chicago, my dreams you made come true. There's room for all us artists here, the sky is much more blue. Oh, Chicago, my dreams you made come true. There's room for all us artists here, the sky is much more blue.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope that some of you were singing along, you know, like feel free to share. I feel, you know, this song always sort of like energizes me. And I'll just mention, you know, like a lot of times as an artist, when you go out and do presentations, you end up talking a lot about yourself. But I just thought this is another fun way to share a little bit about your background. And then maybe hopefully people will remember it and maybe sort of hum it along the rest of the day, so I can sort of like send that part of me with you. And I just wanted to also share, so I am originally from Denmark, but I've lived in the Chicago area for 20 plus years now. And in Denmark, where I grew up, in my family, it was very common that when you had a get together, like a special celebration, you know, like what we call a round birthday, so 40, 50, even 20 or 30, or confirmations, or any sort of like get together, weddings, a lot of times, you know, somebody in the family would be like this songwriter, you know, this hidden songwriter, and they would write these occasional songs, as we call them, for, you know, like these special occasions. And that was a lot of times my mom would say, you know, write a song when I was a family member that had like a special occasion, and then everybody in the party sings, you know, like you wrap it up and disguise it in some sort of fun thing, and it's brought into the person or people you're celebrating, and they, oh wow, look at this thing. And you know, sometimes it's a book, or you know, if they play soccer, it's a soccer ball. And then, you know, you open it up, and then in here, surprise, all these songs that are passed out to all the attendees, and everybody sing along. And I just feel like when I think of like a thing that I really enjoyed going to these parties, because they're very long and you sit and you eat a lot of food, but that was like the fun part. And usually the songs were silly songs highlighting silly things that you did, you know, when you were a kid, or whatever it was, you know, like funny incidents or things that you were known for. And I just thought that it brought such, you know, this shared experience, and it was just like such a positive. And after you sing, like it's probably something with your oxygen. I'm sure there's like a lot of scientific evidence why singing is so good for you, the vibrations and so forth. But we just felt so good after singing together. And so that was sort of like a couple years ago, I was invited to do a presentation at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. And that was sort of like my contribution. So I had everybody, you know, sing together with me. And the image that you see here, after that, I was invited to go to this tiny gallery that's sitting outdoors in a backyard in Franklin Park in Chicago. And they put on this little talent show for the night. And I was invited to also come and, you know, be an artist to be presented. And I wrote a little special song for that. And because it was a little stage, I was able to invite all the audience up onto the stage to sing along with me. And I think we were singing along to Dancing Queen or something like that. So that's why I was wearing this outfit, which actually used to be my mom's gymnastics leotard from the 70s. So anyway, so this is just sort of to get you a little bit of an introduction to like the kind of work that I do. I like things that are fun and participatory, and I'm really interested in this idea of like the artist being the engager rather so much than the artist producing work that's sitting on the wall somewhere and people can go and look at it. So if we move on to the next slide, I'll just sort of give a quick overview of the things that I'll be sharing about today. And obviously, you know, if there is any questions along the way, just feed them in the chat and then Kathy will interrupt me.
Well, that's my comment, right? I love the idea of making occasional songs. And I want to say that at Be Strong Families, we have a resident songwriter lyricist who does that for us. And we actually have this creative conversation, which is kind of like our R&D, where everybody is invited to participate in figuring something out that the organization has to figure out. And we start it with a song like that he wrote for that. So it's like, I love the practice, and I wonder if people have this practice in their family as well. If they create occasional songs, I wonder if anybody in the audience has done this or has been part of an organization that's done this. So
yes, please share
the chat, and then if not, Annie will just go on. So
yeah. So, and you know, like actually sort of as a side note to that, that's what I did when my oldest son was born. I took a song that I had used to sing in high school and I just converted it into just singing his name. And so, you know, whenever I needed to calm him down, that's what I would sing. I would just sing that song with him. And then when my daughter came along, we were able to modify it so it could be a song to her, and my son loved it. We could do that. And then now I have 3 kids, so when my third one came along, you know, they were all, you know, like, this is our song. So in the car, if anybody's crying, we all sing that together. So we take turns putting all our names in there, or we sing everybody, and it's just like a repetitious, and the kids really like that. And it just, I feel like it really calms everybody down.
And we did one for my son. My son we adopted him when he was 8 years old from Ethiopia. And we wrote a song, my ex-husband and I did a song to put him to sleep. It was like a prayer. The beginning part of it was a prayer. And then it was like, and now it's time to go to sleep. You know, it's like, but I just remembered, you know, like writing songs for kids. And my grandmother did that for us. Like she wrote songs like for, you know, to get us to do things. And I'm hearing in the chat, it says, Jamie says, I used to work with a fabulous teacher who would create alternate lyrics to teach history and science to 1st to 3rd graders. And Raquel says, we used it for freshman orientation at a local college and it was awesome, an unforgotten memory. Lindy says, reminds me of teaching and parenting little ones. Songs make impressions and help with transitions, but also with learning too. Yvonne said, my song for me and grandkids, You Are My Sunshine. Yeah, but You Are My Sunshine. I have great memories of my grandfather. He would, all those songs from the 20s, like we would sing them together while we did the dishes at the lake house, like when we go up to visit them. And like all of us sing, You Are My Sunshine, my only sunshine. But we didn't make alternate lyrics, but we sang that song. So singing and music are really a great part of parenting, educating.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just a good way to bring people together, you know, like when you're in a room, you know, especially when it was like a big party or something, having a big room of people just singing together, like there's just, I don't know, it gives me the chills, like just thinking about it. But something just happened that you shared that, and it was like a way, even if you didn't do an icebreaker of any other way, you know, like it was a way, you know, like maybe when you went to the bathroom and somebody else was in line and you were like, oh yeah, that was a funny piece in that song. And, you know, like it was just like a way to like create a connection with somebody else because you had that shared experience. So that I will tell you a little bit sort of like about like how I got into this type of work, because I think that you know, like these are all things, you know, like the whole thing about the singing and the background, obviously that's something that sort of like had popped up in my practice later on as an artist that I just never thought about, like the big influence of that. So the song that we were just singing was, you know, like I mentioned, that was one that I put together for an event at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, and I called it Oh Chicago. So I'm also going to be talking a little bit about what my immigration project, a networking project, a project called Plasticity or Plasticity, depending on how you choose to pronounce it, getting my name out there, resonance, and then this there's like a combination of things from my teaching artist practice. It's called, it's a project called Dream, the Great Wall of Exchange and Remapping West Chicago. And then In This Together and Sprogtipper, which translated into English is language rugs. And then I have a little project at the end for Be Strong Families. So this is what we're sort of going to be going over today. Depending on how much I talk about each, you know, we may have to fast forward a little bit, but I really just I pick projects from my practice that sort of like involve community at different community participation, and community, you know, obviously interpret that as family, you know, your neighbors, wider range, the whole world, whatever, how you wanted to interpret.
A lot of times people are making like I think a lot of people who join the webinars work with families in programs. So I think there's also often a very, and these programs are part of communities as well. So there's a community that's being built within the programs or within the school or within the early childhood center. And then there's also the way that program or that school or that community center works in the larger community. So I think I think people are often on here, you know, to learn for themselves and their families and their communities, but also to think about activities and things that might work in their workplace. So I think this whole participatory art, I'm just calling out making the implicit explicit, but it is kind of like all of the things you're going to talk about, I think should be sparking people's minds and creativity about what could we do in our family or what could we do in our community. And I love the way that your introduction just gave people that idea right there. Like we could make a song, we could sing a song together. So.
Yeah, and that's just really what I'm hoping, you know, like I'm going to talk a little bit about the different levels of participation in all of these projects. So then that way, you know, like just really to inspire, you know, because I've been inspired by a lot of other artists. So I just want to pass that, you know, like inspiration on and take from it what you enjoy and what you like and make it your own. So if we can go to the next slide. So that should just be a little bit about my immigration project. So when I went to Columbia College, and I went to Columbia College in Chicago for my Bachelor of Fine Arts, and this was a project that I started while I was there. And this was, you know, sort of in response to the 9/11 attacks, because there was a lot of like new rules and regulations imposed on international students. And since I was an international student from Denmark, and we were over 100 other international students at the school, we felt very isolated. And so I was trying to think of a way to bring us together, and through, you know, making art, because I'm an artist, you know, like that's the way that I was thinking about it. So this is one way. You know, we had a lot of discussions about what was going on and so many meetings and updates. And then I got to think about, because the proposed ideas was, you know, to collect fingerprints and photos and all this biometric information that would somehow be traceable and trackable in all sorts of ways. I was thinking like I can use that. So, and then I can create a new project about this. So what I did was I reached out to my fellow international student friends and shared about my idea. And so what you see here is some different views of the project. So basically what I asked them all is to contribute thumbprints to me, and then also to allow me to take their picture. And then I pieced their, you know, like a picture as a passport photo would look like. And then I pieced their photo together using their thumbprint. So that's why from afar, it looks like a passport photo, but then as you get up close, it looks really pixelated. And this was also around the time, you know, like when digital art was sort of starting to come out, and this whole like new world of like pixelization and all this stuff was coming out. So this was sort of like, this was, you know, like me getting to know like using digital photography, but it was also me getting to know all my, you know, friends better, because we shared this, you know, concern and worry about what was going on in the world at the time. And so what this project actually did was it did help create a community and a stronger bond between all the international students. And what came out of it was the school, because we formed this sort of like stronger unity, the school actually provided us with this space, like a little lounge that was ours to keep. And while, you know, my intention was to make this art project, so many other things just came out of it. And many of these people I'm still in contact with today, you know, and a lot of them are still in contact with each other. So we can move on to the next slide. But that was just sort of like how, you know, I, as a single person from Denmark, was able to create community with all these people from all over the world. But I didn't know, you know, when I first came here. And then I'm sort of going in chronological order because I feel that it sort of tells a little bit about my story too. So in 2006, or like right around the time when I was done with college, I met this wonderful artist named New York May Wong. I have a cardboard cutout of her, but I think I put it away again. I was going to have it pop in. The two of us together, she was from Malaysia, and the two of us together, like we coincidentally met in a class while we were still in school, and then got to know each other, and we just really clicked, and we just had kept having these crazy ideas. And then we got to talk about how interesting was that we met each other, and that through each other, we got to meet all these other people. And actually, if you want to start playing this video, you don't need to have the sound on or anything. But I can as well talk while we're playing the video. What came out of this was we were invited to go and do a project, and it was supposed to be a performance project. And I had actually taught New York May how to knit. When she grew up, her parents really wanted to impose these traditional Chinese cultures on her, and she had just said no to everything that, you know, like had to do with like using your hands and crafts and all this, because she really wanted to break free from this traditional female Chinese role. And but I was all embracing it. My mom taught me how to knit, so it was something very special to me. It's something I used to do with my grandma. It was just something I felt like bringing people together and knitting together was something very fun and cozy. Like, I don't know if you've heard about the word hygge, but it's a Danish word, but it's been very popular. But bringing people together, just having a cozy time or a good time together. And so what we started out doing was we wanted to create a visual illustration of how networking works. And so we started knitting what you would think like a scarf. And I don't know if it's possible to turn the volume down. I don't know if people are still able to hear me. Um,
Can you turn the volume on the video?
I can do the volume.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because that way,
Yeah,
Annie.
Yeah, yeah, it's just, I don't, there's a lot of, you know, background noise in that. But anyway, so the idea was that, you know, like we would start knitting apart from each other. So we started on this scarf that we started knitting further and further apart. And then we started adding, as people came into the room and were curious about our project, we actually just put in knitting needles and then had them start knitting away from it too. So it started out really, really small, but we had the opportunity to take this many places. And then May actually ended up leaving because she went to grad school in San Francisco. And then eventually she went back to Malaysia. But the project stayed with me, and I took it to so many different places. And I've had more, I think at this point, it's probably more than 800 people that's knit on it. But what's really nice about it is that people could sit down and, you know, knit. And some people didn't know how to, some people knew how to. And while I would typically introduce it, or May would typically introduce it to whoever sort of passed by and was curious about it, it turned into be that whoever was knitting on it had been knitting on it for a little bit, you know, took on the ownership of the piece. And then they would start, you know, inviting people, come and sit down with me. Oh, you don't know how to knit? I will show you how to knit. And it was just, over time, I've just had so many beautiful experiences and people connecting. Like one time I was in Minnesota, I had twin sisters sit down and knit on it together. And we were just talking, you know, and what was really interesting was that the one twin sister said, oh, you know, what's really funny, I haven't really knit in a long time. I remember when I first got married. Do you remember that? Yeah, I knit a sweater for my husband. She mentioned his name, which I don't remember now. Yeah, I knit a sweater for him. And, you know, like he just never really wore it. It ended up just sitting in the closet forever. And the other twin sister almost dropped her jaw, and she was saying, well, that happened to me too. And so she was like, when I just got married with Richard, like I knit him a sweater too, and he just never really wore it. So it's a lot of fun, interesting moments where people, even though they knew each other and grew up with each other, like learned something together and just like really sort of connected over something using knitting. And then another time in the Illinois State Building in downtown Chicago, I had it all spread out, and it's a very busy place because there's the L, like the underground train is right there, and there's a lot of, you know, offices upstairs. There's just a lot of traffic, and I had the opportunity to be there for about a week and sit and knit. And one day I had 11 people sit down, and they didn't know each other. They had all lost their job that day. It was really strange. And then they just, you know, like they got to talk about that, and all of a sudden I have business cards being passed around because somebody was still working and they had a contact there, and it was just really beautiful. And you know, at the end people were shaking hands or, you know, hugging each other. Wouldn't happen today, right, because of COVID, but you know, like it was just such a beautiful moment that I had these completely strangers sit down with me. Some stayed for 2 hours, some were there for a couple minutes, but they're just these very personal connections, because first we sit down, we talk about knitting, but then the talks just go all these other places and they become really intimate and personal conversations that are lovely.
Like quilting bees and stuff, where, you know, traditional women's arts. My question about this is, how did it start? Like, I'm really fascinated by just the technology of it. Like in the center, how does it become like so multifaceted? Like I was thinking of you and May sitting there, and that would only be like one thing. How did it become like more of like an octopus?
Yeah, so what happened is actually that I would knit a row and pass it to her. She knit a row and we passed it back and forth until we had probably about like maybe 10, 20 rows, I'm not sure. And then we slid knitting needles in the other end, and then we just started knitting so we would go further apart. And then as soon as somebody else was interested in joining in, we just slid knitting needles in and then just started knitting on the side. So it sort of started out, you could see it sort of like a little bit in the middle there. I don't know if where it starts, like there is really two, like a main line, like that's the sort of like the headscarf, I don't know what you'd call it, like the main line, and then everything sort of comes out of that. And I've given people complete control, you know, like if anybody wanted to add something else somewhere else, they could, you know, like I've not really, you know, that people have just been invited to come and
so like you could go into the middle of one of these long thin things and you could do something coming out from it horizontally if you wanted.
Yes. So, and I've had people, you know, like, I don't know how to knit, but I can crochet. So I always had a crochet needle handy that I could whip out and said, well, that's not going to stop me, you know, like that's not going to stop this from happening. So people could just add on to, we decided to keep it in red because red is a color that's of significance, like for both of us culturally, actually, like the Danish flag has red in it and the Chinese flag also has red in it. And like the culture has, you know, like red is just a very symbolic color. So that's initially why, you know, like we chose, and we figured it would stand out a lot more. We've done these a lot outdoors. But yeah, it's just, it's really simple. And, you know, like sometimes, you know, you have people mess things up. And that's okay, because sometimes you have people who just come in and they just want to fix things. And then other times, you know, like you just make something new out of that. And I think that, you know, like the grand idea is, you know, like this is, you know, anybody can come in and join this. A lot of people have learned how to knit on this because, you know, like they figured, okay, well, you know, she doesn't care, so we can practice, you know, like it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, I wish that I could show it to you in person because it's really interesting. People have knit little patterns in there and followed the project and come back on it later, and then found, you know, somebody knit in a heart, somebody actually crocheted a little pocket on there. You know, people have done all sorts of things. And I one time had like a 9-year-old girl that, you know, she just sat and she knit, and she didn't know really what she was doing, but it was so funny. It turned into this wide, she just kept picking up stitches, right? And it just became this wide trumpet area that was really, she dropped a lot of stitches too, but somebody else came in and fixed it. And now it's like a really beautiful part of that piece. And I will always remember it, right? Because that's, I know exactly where she was knitting. And I've had little kids knit on this, you know, taking them out to a lot of schools, you know, like this is at a gallery at the Rockford University, but I've taken it outdoors. I've sat outside Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh knitting. I'm trying to think where else I've had it. I've really had it a lot of places.
What's next?
in a film festival. We put it on. We can go to the next one.
Okay,
um,
I'm just saying
but yeah, so
all of them, and I'm watching the time. So
yeah, we can move on to the next one. So this is just sort of like a little bit, so in the networking project, like there's just really a lot of involvement because I'm there, I'm engaging with everybody. So this is another project. I attempted to knit the Chicago skyline out of recycled blue plastic. And it was a really hard and intensive procedure that I unfortunately developed carpal tunnel over. But the participation level in this was, like that I worked together with Columbia College to collect, because these are photo bags. I think is something about the Chicago skyline is one of the most photographed in the world. And so I was interested in the byproduct of photography. So when you print something, these ink cartridges come in this blue plastic and it's really heavy duty. So this is really textural. When you touch it, it's like really raw. It's like thinking about one of those scrub brushes that you can get maybe for your feet or something of like natural, like but anyway, so in this case, I actually just had other like employees that worked in that lab collect that for me and like help cut it up. And that was their participation. But even though like it was just collecting the material for me, it built a lot of ownership. And also, I don't know if anybody is sitting in on this today, but people have been asking me about this project. And when they finally went to see it in person, like it was just this, I collected plastic for this. So anyway, so that was just a very, like a still engagement, but like minimal. We can move on to the next one. So this is another project. I had this awesome student advisor while I was in college, and he was from Kenya, and he was telling me, like this, he was our international student advisor. So he was telling me and like everybody else, like here in America, it's all about networking, which is what we ended up calling that the knitting piece, but it's also all about getting your name out there. So I was sort of really interested in this idea, and especially, like coming fresh out from college as an artist, like how do you get your name out there? So I really took it very literal. And what I did was I made this sign with my name, and then I would just go stand in a lot of different high traffic areas with the sign. And what I would do was I brought this little point and shoot camera with me. This is before everybody had camera phones. And then I asked people who passed by me to take a picture of me while I was doing this. So I had documentation of what I was doing. And what it evolved into was actually that I then, I was invited to do some other sort of project, and I invited the friends and anybody that I knew, like to make a sign with my name and go and stand somewhere and take that picture and then send it to me. And then there became a blog that I updated whenever I got pictures sent. So I have, like these two are just examples. One is in front of the Art Institute in Chicago. Right before they open up, there's a lot of people waiting there. So that's a good area. And the other is over the highway. I think it's on Washington Street in Chicago over 90, is that 90, 94, that I was standing. And in all cases, people would come up to me, ask, who is Anni Holm? Have you been waiting for her for a long time? What, like, can I help you? And then, I would tell them, well, actually it's me. I'm just trying to get my name out there. And it would a lot of times just spark some really fun conversations. And I had people, like, Google, I said, this is also when Googling was really popular, right? I started, first started being really popular, and just to ask, like just Google it. And then they would find the blog and so forth. And I actually had somebody drive off the highway because it's when you don't see it in this picture, but it got really backed up and somebody just drove up, passed by me, rolled the window down and asked, okay, what's going on here? So it was just a great way to connect and communicate, with audience. And as I said in the beginning, if you're an artist and you make pictures and you hang them on a wall, there is not lots of engagement with your artist or creating a community with your audience. But this way there is very direct and fun conversation. And then, in the third picture here is actually an old childhood friend that also took on the task, so I have a lot of people that made signs and went. I have one in Antarctica really on a cardboard sign. But this is an old friend of mine, and she ended up making a shirt, and then she went in front in my hometown in Denmark. There is a little art museum where my favorite artist that really inspired me, when I was younger. And she went in because you're not allowed to take pictures. And then she went in and opened it. She got her mom to go along to take the picture and then send it up. So I have friends, you know, longtime friends participating, but also complete strangers have sent me pictures. So, you know, like a simple idea, you know, like I know people have done it with, you know, like my son's preschool did it, my son and daughter's preschool did it with like little penguins that you would take and take pictures like the mascot. But I just like this idea of like, it's something, it gave some people purpose, right? When they were somewhere and then they had an opportunity, because a lot of times they did the same if they were traveling alone, like they handed a stranger their camera to take the picture so they could send it to me. So it just provided some opportunities for people to connect with others. We can move on to the next one. So this one again, you can play the video. It's okay to leave the sound on. So for quite some time, I've also been working as a teaching artist, and I was specifically invited invited to work for an organization in Chicago called CAPE, Chicago Arts Partnership in Education. And what they do is that they connect visual, or not only visual, but contemporary artists, like now living artists, local artists, to connect with teachers and CPS, and then develop projects together that's related to the whatever the curriculum is. So it's a collaborative. And we can turn maybe the volume down just a little bit, but I don't want it to go completely because there's an interesting thing that happens later where the audio is a little bit. So we partner up, and in this case, I work with Durkin Park Elementary School on the southwest side, and this is actually 2 classes that were merged together, so 35 and 8, so 70 students in this double class, and we worked on a project that had to do with the Holocaust, and they were reading some different texts and so forth. And so together with the students, we developed this performance, and this is what you see. We went on a field trip to the museum, and then as the kids were finished eating lunch, they packed it all up, they stood up, they grabbed their hands, they walked out, what you see here, and we do a little thing in this park that's right across the street from there, and that's it. But this was a collaboration with the students. So we looked at different examples of performance art, of collaborative artwork, and then together we developed this piece, you know, like inspired by being an upstander, inspired, you know, by the Holocaust and the things, you know, like the things from what they learned from the text that they were reading that they really took with them about, you know, like standing up for other people and helping out. So if you notice the sound, I'm going to try to be quiet for a minute. So if you listen, this is 70 fifth graders together. And what's really amazing to me is that they were quiet this whole entire time that we were doing this performance. And while we had talked about like there was a significant element, I myself and the teachers in particular were very doubtful that they were going to be able to do this. But I think that there was this, yeah, now we may have to turn it down because now we've heard that they were really quiet. But what I think is really significant is that moment of them doing this, participating in this art together, they actually became, it was a really powerful moment. Can you not hear me? Okay. So there's just a lot of traffic, and that's what you can hear, you know, out on the road. But anyway, we can turn the volume off now while we let it play. So it was just really interesting to me also, like how, you know, like them coming together and really sort of like forming this unity, and like the teachers reporting like after the fact that this has actually like really strengthened the relationship between the students in the class, like coming up with this together, you know, like they were the ones that were deciding about what they were going to wear. They were the ones that were deciding that we were going to form, they were going to form this circle formation to create this sense of unity, and that they were not going to be talking, and they were going to all hold hands, and they were going to, you know, walk out of the museum and do this and then walk back to the bus. So that was, you know, for me, this is probably also one of my most successful artist projects that I've done in a school, but it was just really beautiful. And like, I really feel like this was just a really great example of like when you give the kids, you know, like this ownership, you know, like they're really on board and they're really with, you know, like really with it. Because so many times when I go into classrooms in various schools, you know, like there's just a lot of noise, nobody's paying attention, you know, like, but this really sort of like brought them together. And even the teachers, I'm not doing any projects at that school anymore, because I'm not with CAPE anymore, but the teachers have remained in contact, and they still refer back to this project as, you know, one of the things that just stand out. So it's just like really bringing this together. So that's, you know, like for anybody who is teaching, you know, like, you know, try it, you know, like it's obviously a learning curve and might not go well every time, but sometimes like really sort of like handing a lot of the responsibility over to the kids, you know, can make a huge difference. So we can go to the next slide. So this is just a couple other examples that I wanted to show of different other projects that I've done either through CAPE or through my local, like a local school district here in West Chicago. I work and I'm co-founder of this organization called People Made Visible. So we have collaborated with after school programs in the school district. And I actually also work in the school district now. But in some of the after school programs, the one that says, as you can see, it's taken from above. I work together with this after school program called Dream. And again, you know, together with the students in there, we wanted to create a piece of public art that send a message out into the world. And West Chicago, there's a small airport here. So we were talking about like how we could make big letters and inspire the world to dream. And that's what they came up with, that we should make a big sign somewhere that says dream. So we not only did the students collaborate in terms of like coming up with ideas and developing it into this, but we also collaborated with the local township that donated wood chips for us to do this. And then all of us built this together. So what you see, the dream on the ground there is built out of wood chips, and, you know, like simple because we could get it for free, you know, like we didn't have to worry about it polluting. And it was like a lot of physical work, which was really fun for the kids to finally, you know, after being in the school all day, you know, like after school, get out there and like haul buckets of wood chips and make this. And, you know, like practicing like literacy, you know, like maybe at a very simple level. And if you see, there's also a little man over off to the side. It's a little bit hard to see because there's some power lines there, but there's also a man waving up into anybody flying by. And then it's the group of students that are there. And we collaborated with the local fire department. They came out so we could take the picture and they could get to see the fire truck. So yeah, so that built a stronger bond there too. And then if you see all the colorful circles over here on the side is at a high school, George Washington High School in the south side of Chicago. In the cafeteria was really dull and boring. So this was also a CAPE project. So together with the artist, the teacher that I worked with, we came up with this idea and the students, you know, of this wall of exchange. So like inspired by Free Cycle, you know, is this a community where people are giving things away and you can ask for things, you know, to save them from the landfill. This was sort of the idea of this. And we collaborated with the whole school in collecting canisters and cans that, you know, we washed out and then we painted. We had, you know, different members of the community donate, you know, leftover paint. And so we painted them and then we screwed them all into the wall to make this really beautiful, abstract, circular thing that, you know, was both sculptural and at the same time, you know, also had like a functional purpose. And what was really interesting that we did we did several projects in that lunchroom, and but the first time I visited the school, I was really sad to see the lunchroom. Like I actually went in there a couple of times, and then, you know, I tried to engage students also to be part of our club. And we made a glitter wall, and from there on things just took on. And so a couple of years later, the students had a lot more pride in that lunchroom. They didn't have any pride to start, but they had some sort of tournament going on in the weekend. And so they came and told us that during this tournament, like all these kids from these other schools came into the lunchroom and they were just taking selfies and pictures in front of all of these things. So it just instilled like a lot of like, hey, but we did this, and this is our school. And they thought like that was really cool. So sometimes it's little things. And again, you know, like we collaborate on different levels with the community and the you know, parents and stuff to donate things, to be part. Sometimes we had parents come in and help us like saw things out and so forth. But we had this space that didn't look good, and then we decided to transform it, and we used, you know, like very inexpensive things to do it, to make a big impact. And that in itself created community, created conversation between the students and staff, between parents, and just like the involvement there. And then the last piece here is just a painting that I did together with some younger kids at actually at my son's school before he went there. But we were sort of like thinking about remapping and like what does a perfect town look like? What would you like your town to look like? And together they designed a new map of West Chicago, our town, and painted in like they wanted a lot of green areas. They wanted a lot of, you know, like lakes, you know, like and then they wanted, I forgot what that is. Oh, a Goodwill. Like that's the building you see there. They wanted a Goodwill and McDonald's and a swimming pool. So just the things that they wanted. It was just a really great way for the kids also to share and learn about what they would like and what they had took pride in the community. And then, you know, like they created this painting together. So, you know, just many different ways. And again, you know, like I'm all about like trying to repurpose. So this, the map or the painting of the town, you know, like there was a local organization that does trade fairs, and they had a bunch of banners that they had to decommission. So we just got those and then we painted on the back of those. So, you know, like it doesn't have to be costly to do, you know, interactive and collaborative projects like this. We can move on to the next one.
Juan says this is a great way of learning of people and their culture and their life, their surroundings and neighborhoods. And Lori said we had an artist who used sand and rocks to draw positive messages on medians and intersections. It was always so cool to find something while you waited for the light to change. It just made your outlook positive.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, you know, like, because I know we're a little bit short on time now, so I don't know, like I can either show this video if people we wanted to put the link in the chat and people can watch it on their own, but it's just another example of a project that I did together with the community here in West Chicago, where I got them together and I photographed people's hands to create this mural. So I would highly encourage, you know, like people to watch that, you know, like this is sort of a bigger scale. We had, you know, money involved, you know, like to pay for this thing to be put up and so forth, but just a way, you know, like for people to feel like they had a hand in it and being involved. So I don't know is it possible to just put that link in the chat so people can watch that on their own?
You put the link in the chat to this, she can do it for sure.
Okay, so then we can move on to the next thing, because this is another video. And then this, you know, like it's just a really a couple of years ago or 5 years ago now, I was invited to do this residency. So that's like you go somewhere and you live there for a while. And I was in Denmark in this apartment complex, and they gave me an apartment to live in, and I opened it up as my studio to make these language rugs. So this is an apartment complex with a lot of refugee families and people just from all over the world. I think they said 82 different nations are represented in this apartment complex. And there's been a lot of things that have not been so positive going on in this apartment complex, and it's a lot of times referred to as the ghetto in my hometown. So what I did was, you know, like I was trying to bring people together, because everybody speaks another language there than Danish, and bring them together to to create these rugs, as you can see up in the corner, the circular one is these braided rugs that are sewn together to make these circles, and each of the colors in there represent a language that they speak. So, you know, like we were thinking about like the colors of the different languages, and then we laid them out, you know, to show them, and anybody could come. But this was just another like simple sort of project of like bringing people together in almost like this, you know, similar quilting bee or knitting circle or whatever, you know, like we were just sitting there braiding and sewing these rugs together and having really great conversation about language that then moved into something else. But let's move on to the next. So this is my last encouragement to you here for today, that I hope, you know, like that I would all, you know, encourage you to participate in. So this is another activity. We don't have to sing or anything. And this is, you can do it now or you can do it later together with your family and friends. But this is really simple. You know, you just need some paper and pencils, crayons or markers. That's up to you, your preference. And then I would like for you to write out the words or draw out the words, be strong. So it could be a big paper, or it could be a small, or be strong families. Whatever, however you prefer, and you can decorate the letters in your favorite colors or make surrounding images and so forth. And then I would like for you to snap a photo of this finished drawing and then share it on social media. So I put in the handles for Facebook and Instagram, and for Twitter for Be Strong Families. And then, you know, like from there on, I would like for you to tape this up in your window to inspire anybody who passes by to be strong, because right now, you know, we're in challenging times, and sometimes I think we just need to be reminded, and sending out this positive message there, you know, like sometimes that's just what people need to read. So I, you know, like I did my little last night, I'm putting mine together that I'm going to be putting up in my window, and I haven't taken a picture of it yet to send it, but just, you know, like whenever you need a break from, you know, all the Zoom calls and being on the screen, you know, or having a little notepad and you could sit and doodle, in terms of, you know, sort of joining in on our community, but also, you know, again, this is something that you can do together with your family or friends, or if you have a get together, you know, like putting that message out there. I've seen a lot of hearts, I've seen other things people are putting up during these challenging times, but you know, sometimes I feel like we just need a positive message, and be strong, or be strong families. I think that it can't be any more positive than that. So I know I talked a lot and said very fast, but I hope that we made it in time and everybody enjoyed it.
We'll be here again next week. Maybe we can talk more next week about how to organize a participatory art project, you know, and what your insights are when things have worked and when they haven't worked, in case people want to do that, you know.
Yes, we can definitely talk about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Annie. We are running out of time. Dee's going to launch the poll. And I love the idea of people being strong and, you know, promoting being strong and Be Strong Families. And if you want to email them to us, we can add them to the PowerPoint for next week too. And it can be an ongoing thing. We could have a place for this on our website with people, you know, with their Be Strongness. So appreciate it very much. Dee, can you advance to the next slide? Oh, wow. What was that? Go back. That's the bonus slide. I like that one.
So, you know, as an artist who likes for other people to participate in my work, I also really try to participate in other artists' artwork. So I just threw that in there. So a friend of mine, Christopher Lucero, have done this project where it's called the Calaveras of Chicago. He's trying to get 100 people that he is photographing. You know, he's doing the traditional makeup, but inspired by that person's story, and then photographing them and then publishing with their story. And he also does these little videos. So I threw that in there because, you know, you got to give in order to take. So, you know, when you expect people to participate in your projects, I feel like, you know, then you also need to be open to participate in other people's projects. And I'm a strong, you know, like participatory artist in other people's project too. So I just threw that in there sort of for kicks.
Does that mean that he wants people to volunteer, or you're just showing us another artist's work?
So I just threw it in there because this is a photograph of me, and it talks about my story about, you know, like bringing people together, and that was sort of his thing. People can nominate themselves, definitely. If you go to that Cavaliers of Chicago, you can nominate yourself, or if you know somebody who has a really cool story, like you can reach out to him
Awesome.
too, you know. So he's, you know, like there is a lot. If you go, it's a Facebook page, so you can go on there, and he has quite a few now, but yeah, go through and like read them all and look at them. They're really interesting. So I would encourage that as well, you know. I'm all for cross promoting.
Thank you very much. That's awesome. I love, it's beautiful. Tomorrow, we are here with Kwesi Rollins from the Institute for Educational Leadership and the presentation is on race, equity, and parent leadership, family strengthening in the midst of multiple pandemics. And then on Monday, Tyler Amoroso and I will be back with pros and cons of gaming for kids and parents. On Tuesday, Tatum Byfield and Rebecca Awley, who are part of our community, volunteered to do a webinar on engaging families through difficult circumstances and conversations. And Yolanda De Rocha was also volunteered for the cooperative co-parenting in the age of COVID. And Annie will be back on Thursday. And with that, I just want to remind people that we're amplifying the things that we want to see more of to build a better world. Amplify art, amplify participation, amplify community participation, and share on your social media. And again, we rely on people in the community. Annie volunteered. Annie wrote me and said she would love to do a webinar on exactly what she did today. And so if you have an idea or you know someone you think would be great for the webinar series, Amplify Health and Arts. Yes, thank you, Yvonne. Then please just write me. Next slide, Dee. Write me. Next slide, Dee.
I'm having a little difficulty going to the next slide.
Oh, okay. She's having difficulty going to the next slide. It just says Kathy, K-A-T-T-H-E @bestrongfamilies.net. So anybody who would like to do a webinar, yeah, it's in the chat. Thank you, Elda. Fill out the poll before you leave. And we will see you tomorrow. And we'll see you next week, Annie. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it. And I know it looks like a lot of people did. So,
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Be safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.